Hi everyone, welcome back to CSharpCorner live show. I'm your host Stephen Simon, and we are back with another episode of Coffee with Pros. And if you're someone who is joining us for the very first time, we do live shows every day at 10 a.m. Eastern, almost like we stream 8 days in a week. And just quick reminder that on Mondays we do Azure AI show where we talk about the entire offerings that Microsoft provides and the entire ecosystem in the AI. Then on Tuesday, we talk about Product Showcase and Coffee with Pros. And today we're going to talk about Code Factory, which is pretty interesting tool. And I have pretty amazing guests to talk about Code Factory. So we'll get there. And then on Wednesdays, we do the CSharpCorner MVP show where we invite community leaders, talk about their community contributions, how they started it. Again, 10 a.m. Eastern. Then on Thursdays, we have CSharpCorner AMA, Ask Me Anything. We are well over 30 episodes, and it's a show where you can go ahead and ask questions to the guests, followed by technical sessions, and pretty famous among the developers. Then on Fridays, we have Growth Mindset Show. That's by Maheshan, who talks about how you can go ahead and talk about more like career perspective. Don't just code your entire life. go ahead and do something else too. Then we also have Rocking the Code World with .NET Dave. I think he is at episode number 15 or 16, and he brings .NET developers or the leaders from Microsoft community, and that's also pretty famous show too. So apart from that, we also do virtual conferences, quite a lot of shows, definitely. So today we're going to talk about Code Factory, and I was just looking at the website. I'll drop a link if you just want to go ahead and know a little more about Code Factory. You can always go to their where did I put it? Yep, codefactory.software. If you just go ahead and land on their website, they just clearly say that Code Factory is an extension to Microsoft Visual Studio 2019, focuses on enabling more efficient design, assembly, testing, refactoring, and maintenance of .NET solutions. I mean, pretty much they do everything, and they literally help. This software helps you to build app solutions faster, much better, following best practices. And to talk more about it, let me go ahead and invite our guest, Bill and John. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the live show.
Hello.
Good morning, Simon.
Good morning.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. I'm really excited to know more about Code Factory. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a quick introduction, starting from John, about who you are and what you do to our live audiences.
Sure. My name's John Hannah. I'm one of the principal owners and creators of Code Factory. My personal background is I've started in app development back in the 90s. So I guess I've been doing this for a couple of decades now. I started in web development and then worked my way forward, the typical career path and building into team leads and enterprise architecture. I've spent my entire structure in Microsoft, so pretty much VB, SQL, C#, kind of that whole arc of code. So that's my in a nutshell. That's my background. I come from a technical background, from a coding and team lead perspective. So,
Bill.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Bill Fencken, also one of the principals of Code Factory. We are also part of a company called Lifecycle Delivery. And so how we kind of arrived at why we wanted to build Code Factory is just that as we worked with a lot of companies, we found that there was a lot of inconsistent approaches to how they would design software. And sometimes creativity is justified. You're solving a specific problem, but when it comes to plumbing code, where you want common, consistent, repeatable, techniques used, we found so much variety. It was just a real challenge for a lot of our clients. So we kind of put our heads down and figured out, can we build some tooling that runs inside of Visual Studio to kind of make that an easier experience for people.
Yeah, so that's great. So now everyone who's joining us, we're going to talk about Code Factory today, and we have already taken this name like 3 to 4 times. And starting maybe with Bill, you can go ahead and answer it. What is actually Code Factory? You talk about some best practices, tooling, and all that, right? What is actually Code Factory? I've shared the URL, but how can you go ahead and explain it in simply, maybe in 2 sentences or yeah?
Sure. At a high level, it's a native extension that runs inside of Visual Studio. and it allows you to work with your code to extend it, refactor it easily, to implement common methods for bounds checking, error logging. I mean, just any type of real common repetitive plumbing code you can auto-generate and regenerate quite easily. And so the goal is to kind of do that within the tooling that people are already using, Visual Studio.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. But John, you want to add something of that?
Well, yeah, there's two basic scenarios as we've used it. We've had other people use it. To Bill's point, it's an extension inside Visual Studio. So at a low level, for the technical folks listening in, it is a service that will read your code. So right now it's C#. So if you have a C# code base or really any kind of Visual Studio solution, it'll read that and generate a model for you. It's just as simple as that. So all of your interfaces, classes, methods, properties, attributes, the whole bit is a model that then you could write code to. To Bill's point, is what we have used it for. We found the most success over is in a pattern implementation, right? Error handling, for example, is one of those common things that everybody says, you must do error handling. Yeah. But somehow it's oftentimes find out that that's the thing that people falls to the wayside first. Or logging. Logging's a great one. We should all do logging all the time, every place. Mm-hmm. So with something like CodeFactory, you can go in there and you could add that, add those patterns in. It gets a little more complicated once we get a little further in the conversation, but yeah, mechanically, that's what the service is. That's what it's doing for you.
Okay, so that sounds pretty promising from a developer's perspective. But Bill and John, if I go ahead and think of this, there are already tools available online. They were already there, guys were using it, right? So why did you guys come out with this new tool, CodeFactory, and how is it different than all out there?
All right. I'll take first crack at it, and Bill, you can back me up and fill in the blanks where I get going a little too fast here. It honestly spawned out of the fact. Remember when I said when I came out of being a senior dev and took on team lead, went into enterprise architecture, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that we found is that particularly when you bring on new people, either new people to a project or juniors. People that are new to professional development. It's not necessarily writing code that's the tough part. It's the design. It's the patterns. Why do you do this? Why is error handling so important, right? Why is maintenance and architecture so important? So the reason we wrote CodeFactory the way we did and why it's different than other places is that, one, the code base and the patterns have shifted over time, right? So, like I said, I've been doing this since the 90s when bandwidth was very, very limited, right? And we went through the first round of the browser wars. So everything shifted to go to a more server-side centric way to write applications, particularly web applications. Put as much code up into the database, put as much code into the server as you can. You've got thin client computing. Nowadays, of course, for example, with Blazor, it's going the other way, right? We're now putting more code, we're putting more logic, we're putting more capability out to the edge. So first is we didn't want to come across and understand that this was the one true way to write all code. So that's one kind of major difference is that a lot of code generators, and they're not bad, that's the approach that they've taken, is that when we're going to write code, we're going to write a service, this is the way they wrote it. This is the way that this is their implementation of a service endpoint. This is their implementation of logging. This is their implementation of insert thing here. So that was kind of one of our chief design principles is that we didn't want to be in a position of telling everybody that this is the way you must write code. Not to mention which is that we didn't think we could possibly have a grip on all the different kinds of code that people had written. Right? So when you look in a migration scenario, which our tool can do, because since we give you a model of your own code base, it's pretty arbitrary, right? Could be a small website, it could be web forms, it could be an ASP, it could be a thick client app. It doesn't really matter. The pattern is what is important. So exception handling is going to be largely the same across the board, right?
Okay.
The way you talk to a service is going to be largely the same. How you talk, right? But there's nuances. So when we wrote CodeFactory, that was the big thing. So what we've done is we've created the platform that reads, generates the object model, hooks into Visual Studio. So you've got events, you can right click, you can interact with it, you can build a screen for yourself. And then we've opened up the actual template development so that we provide some base templates so that people look at it and take what we have, and it's out on GitHub. That's one of the links I think we've shared. Or you can write your own, right? So if you don't like the way we've done it, you don't like the way we've implemented logging, for example, you have your own special logging framework that is important to your client and your stakeholders. Fantastic. You should totally do that without having to worry about what we think or why it's good or not. So the primary difference, I think, is that it's a general purpose tool and that we're not enforcing our set of patterns or rules on the way you implement your code, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nor can we anticipate what kind of changes are going to come down the road, in 6 months that you might want to go in that path. John's point, we're kind of setting this up for people to use the work we've put up on GitHub as reference work. Use it.
Okay.
If it works as the way you want it to, great, you can extend it, but you can also learn how to use the authoring tool to write your own automations, right? So there's been interest from a number of community members who've said, well, can it do this? Well, sure, let's talk about that. And we can, take some of those questions in our GitHub makerspace where we've got room for people to pose ideas like, would it work for instance, one of the guys we work with did a WCF to gRPC utility, right? So sure, yeah, that's something that we can do. And so that to John's point, it's really less, we're really proud of the authoring tool that we've built. We think that it really is solid, but the content is really, that's where the value is, right? So
limitless part. And before sorry to interrupt a little bit, but one of the core takeaways, probably one of the largest takeaways, the differences between the tool we wrote and the other side, is that CodeFactory is entirely design time. Right? Okay. We're not putting any kind of assemblies or insertion post build or any kind of interpreters or aspect oriented into your code base where you have to take a dependency hit on any of our assemblies. It's entirely design time. So you can use CodeFactory to generate, 12,000, 15,000, 100,000 lines of code, compile it, build it, throw CodeFactory, turn it off, put it away, and your code is still your code. You've written the code, you've put it together. So that's probably, from a technical point, one of the other big takeaway differences, right?
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah. So that definitely covers the how it is different from the other tools, and that's well answered. So John, you did mention a couple of times about code generation, right? You did mention about code generation. So what do you think? What are the actual benefits, both for the short term and long term, for the design code generation? What do you think? What strikes you first?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is, believe it or not, it's as simple as standards. Right. Okay. It's going back to a standard, whatever that standard is. Right. There is kind of these industry accepted standards on how to write a service or how to write exception handling or logging, kind of these general purpose. But what we're trying to do, particularly in kind of professional land, when you're not at home building the next cool widget, right, is you're not building code for myself. I'm building it for the next guy down the road, right? So when I organize and build my code base, I want it to be readable, understandable, and easily maintainable. One, not just so that I don't have more gray hair personally that falls out and get frustrated, but two, for all of my clients, whether I'm a consultant or whether I'm a full-time employee somewhere, it's cheaper to maintain, right? It is a much easier way to handle the software. So primarily, when you look at kind of the takeaways, long-term benefits. When you go to code generation, you're going to be enforcing a set of standards, right? So example, if all I do is, all right, we're just going to stick with exception handling and logging, for example, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to write my code, and then I have a code automation come in, right click, boom. It's going to put in all of my code exception handling and all of my logging, right? Okay. Well, now I know that all that is implemented the same way, right? All under my logging, my enter, my exception, all my guard code, all of those things are done. And they're done, the way I quote, the architect or the design lead says they're going to be. So that when you go down the line, you've got, a real assurance that the code is going to behave the same, right? And that anybody else looking at the code, whether it's me or the employer or the stakeholder later down the line, is going to be able to see the same thing. Second is probably performance. In this one, I use the word probably on purpose, because you could design yourself into poor performance, even with standards, if you're not careful. But let's assume that you know what you're doing. You've designed a highly performant system or subsystem using code enforcement or an automation tool to adhere to those standards is a really, really good way to make sure that your code is always going to perform. And .NET particularly is one of those odd tools, and I'm going to speak general in a general sense here, but it's one of those odd tools that less code doesn't mean better performance. It is one of those odd things that sometimes more code, sometimes a lot more code will in fact give you a higher performance, right? Okay. So those are probably the two big takeaways when you go into code automation. One is that I can, enforce a set of standards so that I know that the code is compliant, particularly if you've got, some SOX compliance or MARSI compliant, right, whatever your application has. And two, it's going to be highly performant. Third is one of those things it's kind of an outtake from those two others, which is that training, believe it or not, because forcing you to go through the exercise, okay, I'm going to use code automation, and it's going to, for example, do all of my exception handling code. Well, then that means I can bring in somebody who's relatively new, who doesn't understand the proper way to do exception handling, or might be new to the language, and now they've got a real easy crutch, right? I can automate that part, right? Until a couple 3 months down the road, and they finally get their feet underneath the ground, they understand what's going on. That this is the proper way to do logging. This is the proper way to do exception handling, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So right now we have talked about CodeFactory, about some of the benefits, design time code generations. We've had an overview about this tool and what it does actually. Let's go ahead and actually talk about this tool itself, right? Its platform. So if anyone of you can go ahead and talk about the different components it has, how should one go ahead and use it, to just give you an overview about this tool itself. Nate, Bill, John, anyone?
Sure. Well, there's two main components. There's the runtime, which is the extension that it is installed into Visual Studio, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's an SDK, which is it's a NuGet package. You download. Mm-hmm. And those two things allow you to build and take advantage of everything inside of CodeFactory, right? Okay. The runtime is responsible for reaching down into Roslyn, because that's what we've done is we're reaching out and we're doing real-time model generation of your code. So if you've got a file in your solution or project, we'll pick it up, compile it. Roslyn will compile it. We'll pull the object out and present it back to you. That's all the runtime. Right? The SDK is responsible for doing the wire up. So we've built in the features so that you can interact with the Solution Explorer. So if you want to put a new command, for example, in one of the examples that we've put out there, that web forms to Blazor, where you just right click on a project and you say migrate. We pop up a dialog, and that dialog is just a WPF control. There's nothing really magical about it. Believe it or not, underneath the covers, Visual Studio 2019 is WPF, right? So pop it up, ask a couple questions, and then we run the execute. We run the command, right? Where we do all the migration for you, or migrate a single file. So between those two things, those are the actual only components that exist. The third part of that, I implied it, but let me be clear. We've got the runtime, got the SDK. The two of those, you build a what we call a template or a CFX package. Mm-hmm. That CFX package contains all of your personal automation, right? And it is literally, it's a CFX extension. It lands in the your bin folder, right? When you're done building the template. That thing, just you pick it up and drop it in the root of your solution. So if you've got a target solution, or you want to put it, that automation in one project or one solution and maybe not another, that's what kind of allows you to get away with that. Mm-hmm. You move that around, and then that's it. The runtime, when it opens up your solution, we'll see if there's a CFX file there. If it is, it'll pick it up. It'll register your commands and events, and your automation's ready to be used. Yeah.
So all this happening, John, do we have any system requirements for it? I mean, any minimal requirements for that?
Yeah, Visual Studio 2019, right?
That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it right now. It's underneath the covers. It is, in fact, .NET Standard, .NET Core, because this has to do with Visual Studio and writing extensions for Visual Studio, where Visual Studio still being 32-bit, parts underneath the covers. But no, there's no other rules outside of that. If you want, we give you the ability to read any file, whether it's C# or not, in a target solution. So you've built a template, you put it in a solution. And for example, it might be a fair question for people to ask, well, web forms to Blazor, an ASPX file doesn't have C# code in it, right? Fair enough. Well, we still give you the file. We just can't give you a model against it. You still have the ability to go in and modify whatever that text is and manage it and re-emit it and migrate it and do whatever it is you want to do. Matter of fact, we implemented HTML agility pack, I think is what, for people who know what that is, right? I think we pulled that down so that we could read it and get an object model off the ASPX file. And then that just goes out there and you can do whatever you need to do. C# is the only language right now that we're supporting where we will give you a compiled off ROSM object model. We've looked at doing some others, and it's kind of on the roadmap, but it really depends on what people are looking for. So, for example, TypeScript, I know, is one that people would love. We'll have to see, how many people ask for that versus not. Java. There's no reason you couldn't do that. In any of them that have some kind of compiler that will emit an object out of it, we can get to eventually on the roadmap. We just started with C# because that seemed to have the largest audience and the largest number of people to begin with. So.
And maybe your background too with Microsoft. That's why you started with C#.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also we've written it in such a way we haven't yet. This is kind of one of those cool want-to-haves, depending on adoption and how people take to the tool. Is maybe we look into putting it in code, some long-term UPS code. But right now we're tied to the project system.
IDE.
Yeah, the IDE. Yeah, we're kind of hooked into the IDE of Visual Studio. So as long as you got Visual Studio 2019 or later, you're good. Right?
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like you don't have a short term, you have a long term plan. You can also go ahead and move to Java or anything, right? That this tool can
Oh,
be
sure.
extended, and you do have plans about it. So that was kind of first half about the show. Where we did talk about the all technical aspects, what tools are needed, how it's better, how you can go ahead and take leverage of it, system requirements. Now let's move towards the second half. And for the guys who are joining it today we are talking about Code Factory, and I have with me Bill and John, and we have talked about the first half. And it was now we'll move to the second half, and we'll see how people can go ahead and actually leverage the community and resource out there. And Bill, I'll reach out to you, and let's talk about some of the community that Code Factory provides, and people can go ahead and utilize that.
Sure, Simon. So as John alluded to a moment ago, really, we acknowledge that we built the tooling that's going to do the authoring and allow you to consume authored templates, but the templates themselves is really where the rubber meets the road, right? It's there's so many different scenarios out there, and in fact, one of the links in that link tree that you shared earlier is kind of a makerspace page where we set up a makerspace page where community projects. Go ahead and look up if you want to just pop that one open, the fifth one down. There you go. That project or that page rather is intended to kind of spark the juices, right? So people can look at it and say, oh, well, here's a bunch of different scenarios that we might want to tackle. And so given that, we really want to extend ownership of these ideas out to the community, because that's where, people will bounce something off, they'll refine it, they'll adjust it. And then, we get real buy-in with just a broader community than just us sitting on top of the hill saying, do it this way, right? We've got some examples in there. The first couple links towards the bottom under the Help Wanted section. We've already built one for migrating web forms to Blazor as kind of a sample project. People can look at that. They can extend that. They can, fork the project and just go off and do their own thing with it, right? Same with WCF to gRPC, but you can see there's a handful of other bullets completely unrelated to web forms or to WCF, right? There's, if you've got some old Telerik controls that you want to either update or you want to put some new custom ones in from Infragistics or some other vendor, right? And you want to find, replace, and then reconnect all the wiring behind those controls. Those types of things are very manageable within CodeFactory's solution, right? And so our goal is really, especially for this call, this CSharpCorner community for us represents just a huge number of people that have great ideas and are willing to kind of take on open source projects and put their signature, put their mark on it, right? And so within the website itself, there are, we've got tutorials. If you look on the support menu at the top, that has links to the video tutorials. There's a bunch of like, how do I, why should I, when can I use this feature, why shouldn't I use this feature? All of that is kind of, we've got a handful of those started. Also in the link tree, our YouTube channel is provided, so people can subscribe, and when new content becomes available, they can quickly be alerted to that, right? And so another link within that was over on GitHub, right? So the GitHub space is designed to allow people to kind of throw up their own questions, and this is kind of the homepage for the product. And then if you go up to the repos section on this at the top of this page, you've got just go to
up one more at CodeFactory LLC.
Up at the root.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, there you go. And then we've got some pinned repositories in here, but the public projects repo is kind of designed to elicit dialogue, right? Just, hey, what about this? Could I do that? And let the community kind of weigh in on the types of templates they think would be useful. So
I think
open source approach, we just believe, again, I think, to John's point earlier, a lot of automation tools are very useful. We use a lot of automation tools ourselves, right? But the challenge becomes when you want to do something differently than the author of that tool intended. And so we really recognize there's a lot of creativity out there that can participate in the building process.
Okay.
or they've got, yeah, it's the middle 80%, right? That as long as you live in the middle 80%, you're awesome. Anything on the beginning 10 and last 10, life is more difficult. So that's where we think CodeFactory has an answer. Those outside 10%, if there's just not an automation out there that fits because you've got, a weird dependency, you've got a dependency that, doesn't fit or is non-standard in some other way, or perhaps a really old technology, this is an answer. You can write up an automation template and, go to town. At that point, it's just code, right?
Right.
Okay. So Bill and John, when you guys go ahead and encourage people to go ahead, maybe contribute it, right, and help you with that, is there any way you encourage people to by awarding something or maybe through a recognition? Is there a way you guys do it?
Well, so a couple of things. That's a great question, Simon. Thank you for asking that. So eventually, right at the moment, what we're doing is making a commercial license available for community, and so eventually the CodeFactory product will be sold commercially. At the moment, what we're doing is we're basically building out a community of users, and so we'll have a special offer at the end of the call. You can share the link where people can go and download CodeFactory. But our goal is to make sure that as people are contributing to that GitHub public projects repo, we want to recognize those people, give them credit for the work that they're doing. In some cases, people will monetize those templates. They'll figure out how to solve a project, and they'll use CodeFactory to go build tooling for their customers. And we want them to do that without any obligation to us, right? We're not along for that ride. We give them the engine and the chassis, and where they drive that car is completely their decision, right? But the sample code that we've provided is really intended to let those people see how to build automation. And then as they build theirs, on one of the public project links, we've got a list of all these other people that are contributing to CodeFactory open source automation and linking to those projects where they've got them hosted on GitHub. And the goal is for those contributors, we'll make sure they have continual free access to the licensing. So when you want to publish to projects, and make them open source, we want to encourage that and put no obstacles in front of those people. So at a certain point, though, as larger entities, organizations, corporations want to use CodeFactory, obviously we need to commercialize it at some point. Yeah. And so, but that's down the road at the moment. Our main goal at the moment is to get lots of great content out there, open source, where people can learn from one another, much like the CSharpCorner is designed to do, right? It's all about kind of sharing ideas and sharing techniques. And so we're excited to be, part of this call today, and also to welcome that C# community into the CodeFactory open source community, so we can really start getting some good input from your community.
Yeah. So guys, just go ahead and check out this CodeFactory.software, and they have this the very nice build website where you can find all the resources Bill and John have been talking about. They have tutorials, guidance help, GitHub documentation, so you can find everything over there. And the best part, if you just don't have time, just watch the very first video on the landing page. Right. It will give you a very good idea about what this tool is and how you can go ahead and get started, and what are the possibilities you can do with it. I'll quickly like to spend a couple of more minutes with John, and I'll ask him about the templates that you provide, right? The template that's already there, right? Mm-hmm. That's more like an awesome template. So I suppose that template has all the best practices, all the key things that should encourage. Can you talk a little more about that so people who are watching can get a little more idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one probably to focus on is that web forms to Blazor that's up on GitHub. We've gone to it's kind of a cool idea, right? Take an old web forms app. It's something we worked with Jeff Fritz on, because he's in that space a lot. So we built this to take web forms and just convert it over into Blazor server, right? But for people who click into that on GitHub and take a look at it, we've documented it. We've put all kinds of just README documentation, you can click through. But we've also taken pains so that when you actually open up the code and look in the actual source code, we've commented it well, probably like you're supposed to, but people would probably call that excessive, comments nowadays. But we've commented everywhere we could think of to make sure people understood exactly what was going on. And, it's also a real good candidate because it uses pretty much most of the functionality. It's got, a couple dialogues. So people can build, we show you how to build a dialogue, right? And here's what it looks like in the XAML to build your own customized dialogue and, pop a screen for people. It uses, the code models so that when you, go pull up the logic at, some kind of, middle tier or server side code, it'll do that. And we also show how to, build in third-party apps like the HTML Agility Pack, which we used. That's a freebie NuGet package, right? So when we built the template, you just take the dependency, it gets compiled up and sent out. So it's a real good candidate. There are a couple others people can look at out there. There is a core automation for ASP.NET, which is really more about pattern and standards enforcement, right? It's not a migration scenario. So if you're doing greenfield work, that'd be a good place to look at. Common delivery framework, a couple of those. If you look down, I think there's the WCF to gRPC is one that's out that's not pinned. You kind of have to scroll down a little bit to get to it. But exactly like what it says, it'll take a WCF service and convert it, right?
Okay.
So,
Yep.
Yeah. So really, anybody can go in here, grab those, pull a clone down, and assuming they've got the license, build it and use it, right?
Okay. That's pretty cool. I mean, we did talk about this GitHub and code, and I think many people watching now, and when we go and put this on CSharpCorner platform where millions of people would watch over time. So people from community would also like to go ahead and create content, right? They're very willing to go ahead and maybe create content. They look at their platform. They feel like, okay, let me go ahead and do something on my own. Is there any way they can reach out to CodeFactory or to you, Bill, and then you guys can help out with the content, because people like to do videos. They write articles, blogs, right? So any possibilities with that?
Absolutely. I think there's our email on the website, obviously, first of all, but probably one of the fastest ways is on any one of these probably just go with the main CodeFactory repository. If you were to hit the issues or contact, that's going to be one of our primary ways to interact with the community right off the bat. We just leverage into the GitHub. Back and forth. But yeah, definitely. Or our contact information here on the site. You can reach out to either one of us. We'll be happy to talk to you.
Okay, perfect. So I think we are almost on time. Before we go ahead and close, we did cover the entire ecosystem, right? We did talk about everything with the community and also the tooling background and how you can go ahead and use it, some of the best practices and what are the offerings that you guys provide. Anything last word, starting with you, Bill, you want to go ahead and anything else you want to say?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, we do have a promotion for the C# Corner community. Yeah, promo page. That's it's a landing page that's set up in that link tree. And basically, what it is it's a 6-month trial subscription. Normally 30 a month once we start charging for this. But the goal is we're just really all focused on just getting people to download it and give it a try. We've got GitHub linked up to alert us whenever anyone reports an issue or a question on one of the discussion boards. So basically, they would just click the button that says request trial license. They'll get prompted to put in their name, and then they get directed to a kind of a setup page where they can download the app, put in their license key, and start playing with the product. So yeah, no,
that's
I would.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's very nice of you. Yeah.
And we've got, as you can see on the bottom, we've got at the bottom of that page, there's our GitHub link, LinkedIn link, Twitter. Follow a lot of this to kind of keep current when we publish news about anyone's cool do template that they've put out there. We really want to make sure and acknowledge the people that are contributing to the pool of automations that we think people have good ideas for.
Yeah, that's very nice of you. I mean, guys, just go ahead and grab this link. And if in any case miss it, we're gonna put this link also on the article that we post on C Sharp Corner. That will be there. You can also go ahead and find this link over there. So that's very nice of you guys. Thank you so much for
Sure.
yeah. And
Thank
John,
you.
any last words you want to add?
No, I think I've said all the important parts. I mean, I think like I mentioned when we were chatting before the stream started off, it can get a little meta. It can get a little writing
Yeah.
code that reads code to write code to build. Yeah, it can get a little deep. So if anybody's got any questions or concerns, just reach out to us through here or through GitHub or however. We'll be happy to help walk you through it.
All right. So that was a great session. Thank you, John, and thank you, Bill. We're definitely gonna go and encourage the community to go and try this tool. It's pretty fantastic. They also give you this free 6 months trial, so there's no loss. Just go ahead and grab this offer and make the best out of it. And if you like it, go ahead and contribute too. I mean, there are ways you don't have to just buy it.
Absolutely.
You can go ahead and contribute too. So thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate for all that you do for the community, and we'd love to have you back whenever you are available, or when you want to go ahead and add any more features on the platform. We
Sure.
would love to go ahead and talk about that to the community. So thank you so much, and have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Simon. Take care.
Bye.